Prologue. The Last Letter. Winter, 1943. The envelope was stained with mud and rain, the ink bleeding at the edges where water had seeped through the canvas mailbag. Elena's fingers trembled as she held it up to the dim light of the kitchen window. Outside, snow fell silently over the village, covering the world in a blanket of cold white, a stark contrast to the fire that burned in her chest. She recognized Thomas's handwriting immediately. The loops and curves, the way he pressed too hard on downward strokes, leaving impressions on the paper beneath. She had memorized every detail of his hand during their courtship, had traced the letters he sent with her fingertips in the dark of night when loneliness threatened to swallow her whole. But this letter felt different. Elena's mother watched from the doorway, her face carved with the worry that had become permanent since the war began. 2 of her sons were already gone, one to the Eastern Front, one to a grave marked only by a wooden cross somewhere in France. She couldn't bear to watch her daughter break again. "Read it quickly," her mother said softly. "Like removing a bandage." But Elena couldn't move quickly. Her hands wouldn't obey. Because somehow, in the way a heart knows things before the mind can accept them, she understood that this letter would change everything. She broke the seal. Chapter 1. Before the War. Spring, 1939. The first time Elena saw Thomas, he was laughing. It was a sound that seemed impossible in their small village, where laughter had become as rare as oranges and sugar. The depression had carved hollows in people's cheeks and shadows under their eyes. But here was this young man, head thrown back, laughing at something his companion had said, completely unaware that his joy was a rebellion against the grey despair that had settled over Europe like fog. Elena had come to the market with her mother, carrying their meager coins and hoping for flour and perhaps, if God was merciful, coffee. She stood at the baker's stall, counting and recounting their money, trying to make mathematics work through sheer force of will. "That won't be enough," Thomas said beside her, startling her so badly she nearly dropped the coins. She turned, ready to snap at this stranger for stating the obvious, but the words died in her throat. He wasn't mocking her. His eyes, impossibly blue, like the sky before a storm, held only kindness. "I'm sorry," he said quickly, seeing her expression. "That was rude of me. I only meant..." He fumbled in his pocket and produced a few more coins, pressing them into her hand before she could protest. "Please. Consider it a loan. You can repay me with a walk through the village. I'm new here, and I could use someone to show me around." Elena's mother appeared at her elbow, eyeing the stranger with the suspicion that all mothers possess. "We don't take charity from strangers." "Then it's fortunate I won't be a stranger for long," Thomas said, extending his hand. "Thomas Weber. I've just taken the position at the schoolhouse. Mathematics and literature, though I confess I'm better at one than the other." "Which one?" Elena heard herself ask. "That depends on the day," he said, and smiled. It was a smile that made her forget, just for a moment, about empty cupboards and mounting debts and the increasingly frightening news from Germany. Her mother reluctantly accepted his handshake. "Margareta Kovac. This is my daughter, Elena." "Elena," Thomas repeated, and the way he said her name, careful, reverent, as if it was something precious, made her stomach flip. "A beautiful name. It means light, doesn't it?" "You know Greek?" Elena asked, surprised. "I told you I was good at literature." His eyes sparkled with mischief. "So, about that walk." Elena looked at her mother, who sighed in the particular way that meant she knew she'd already lost the battle. "1 hour. And stay where people can see you." "Mama." But Thomas just laughed again, that impossible, joyful sound, and offered Elena his arm. They walked through the village square, past the church with its bell that no longer rang. The bronze had been donated to the cause, though no one could say which cause exactly, past the houses with their shuttered windows and the fields waiting for spring planting. "It's beautiful here," Thomas said. "Peaceful." "It's dying," Elena corrected him. "Everyone who can leave has left. The young men go to the cities looking for work. The girls follow them or marry farmers from other villages. Soon there will be no one left but the old and the stubborn." "Which are you?" "Both, probably." She smiled despite herself. "And you?" "Why would a teacher come to a dying village?" Thomas was quiet for a moment, his expression growing serious. "Because dying things need teachers most of all. They need someone to remind them of what's worth living for." Elena stopped walking. That's either very wise or very naive. Can't it be both? She studied him, this strange young man with his impossible optimism and his blue eyes. What are you running from, Thomas Weber? What makes you think I'm running? Everyone who comes here is running from something. Or to something. Which is it? He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw something flicker in his eyes, a shadow, a memory, a fear. But then he smiled again, and the shadow was gone. Maybe I was running to you, he said lightly. I just didn't know it yet. It should have sounded ridiculous. It should have made her laugh or roll her eyes or walk away. But instead, Elena felt something shift inside her chest, like a door opening in a house she thought had been sealed shut forever. You should know, she said quietly, that I don't believe in fairy tales. Good, Thomas replied. Neither do I. I believe in something much better. What's that? Real things. Like laughter on a spring morning. Like a girl who counts her coins twice to make sure she has enough. Like the way your eyes change color in the sunlight. Are they green or brown? I can't quite tell. Thomas. Elena, I'm not asking you to believe in anything except this moment. Right here, right now, walking with me. Can you do that? She could. God help her, she could. That walk lasted far longer than an hour. They talked about everything. Books, music, his childhood in Munich, her dreams of seeing the ocean someday. He told her about teaching, how he loved watching students' faces when they finally understood a difficult concept. She told him about helping her mother with the sewing, about her younger brothers who were too young to understand why there was never quite enough food. When he finally walked her home, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that seemed too beautiful for such hard times. Can I see you again? Thomas asked at her doorstep. Elena wanted to say yes immediately, but caution held her tongue. Why? Because in the 4 hours we've spent together, I haven't thought once about the news from Germany. Because you make me laugh and you challenge me and you don't pretend the world is something it's not. Because, he paused, seeming to gather courage. Because I think you might be the reason I came here. You don't even know me. Then let me know you. Let me spend every day learning everything there is to know about Elena Kovac. The world is falling apart, she whispered. Can't you feel it? Everything is changing. All the more reason, Thomas said, to hold on to something good. Against her better judgment, against every instinct that told her not to get attached in such uncertain times, Elena nodded. Tomorrow, she said. After I finish helping Mama. His smile could have lit the whole village. Chapter 2, Letters from the Front. September, 1941. My dearest Elena. I'm not supposed to tell you where I am, but if you look at a map and find the coldest, most godforsaken place you can imagine, I'm probably 100 miles east of that. The censors will black out half of this letter, I'm sure, but I don't care. I need to write to you. I need to remember that somewhere in this world, there's warmth and laughter and a girl with green-brown eyes who makes me believe in tomorrow. We marched for 3 days straight. My feet have blisters on top of blisters, and Klaus, remember I told you about Klaus? The one from Hamburg who snores like a freight train, swears his toes are going to fall off from frostbite. But we keep moving because what else can we do? I think about our last night together constantly. Do you remember? We sat by the river until the stars came out, and you told me you were afraid. I said I wasn't, and you called me a liar. You were right. I'm terrified, Elena. Not of dying, though that scares me too, but of never seeing you again. Of never hearing you laugh at my terrible jokes or feeling your hand in mine or watching the way your nose crinkles when you're thinking hard about something. I know I promised to come back. I know I said I'd marry you the day the war ended. I meant every word. But Elena, if something happens to me, no. I won't write that. I won't even think it. Because I made you a promise, and I'm going to keep it. Write to me soon. Tell me about the village. Tell me what your mother is cooking and what books you're reading and whether old Mrs. Schmidt is still gossiping about everyone from her window. Tell me about normal things, because I need to remember what normal feels like. I love you. I've loved you since that first day in the market, and I'll love you until the stars burn out. Yours always, Thomas. Elena read the letter 17 times before she could bring herself to put it down. Her tears had spotted the pages, causing some of the ink to run, but she didn't care. It was proof that Thomas was alive, that he was thinking of her, that the promise they'd made to each other still held. She pulled out her writing paper, precious now, expensive, but worth every penny, and began her reply. My darling Thomas. Your letter arrived today, and I cried. Mama asked if it was bad news, and I told her no, it was the best news in the world because it meant you're alive. Mrs. Schmidt is indeed still gossiping, though now she has less to gossip about since half the village is gone. She asked about you last week, said she always knew you were a good man, though I distinctly remember her calling you that suspicious foreigner when you first arrived. War makes prophets of us all, apparently. The village is strange without you and the other men. It's all women and children and old men now. We've taken over everything, the fields, the shops, the work that was too hard for us before. Turns out we are stronger than anyone thought. I'm helping at the school now, teaching the younger children their letters. I think of you every day, standing at that same desk, probably making mathematics interesting in some impossible way. The children ask about you. I tell them you're a hero, fighting to keep them safe. I don't tell them that I lie awake at night praying that you're not a hero, that you're a coward who hides in a bunker and never sees combat, because heroes die and cowards come home. I'm sorry. That was dark. But you asked me to tell you true things, and that's the truest thing I know. I'm reading Gertie again. You'd laugh. I know I said his poetry was overly sentimental romantic nonsense, but now I understand it. Now I know what it's like to love someone so much that every moment apart feels like dying a little bit. Two souls, alas, are dwelling in my breast. Do you know that line? One soul is here, doing the daily things, fetching water, mending clothes, teaching children. The other is with you, wherever you are, keeping you safe through sheer force of will. Come home to me, Thomas. Come home safe. Forever yours. Elena. The letters continued, crossing the distance between them like bridges built from words. Some arrived quickly, others took months. Some never arrived at all, lost to bombs or fires or the chaos of war. November, 1941. Elena, we saw combat today. I can't write about it. The censors wouldn't allow it, and even if they would, I don't think I could find the words. But I need you to know that I'm alive. Shaken, changed, but alive. When the worst of it was over, I found myself thinking about that day in spring when we walked to the waterfall. Do you remember? You slipped on the rocks and I caught you, and for just a second we stood there, you in my arms, water sparkling all around us like diamonds. You said, "Don't let go," and I said, "Never." I'm still holding on, Elena. Across all these miles, through all this darkness, I'm still holding on. January, 1942. Thomas, your last letter terrified me. I can read between the lines, you know. I can see what you're not saying. Please, please be careful. The world can lose 1,000 soldiers, but I can only lose one Thomas. There's talk in the village that the war will be over by summer. No one believes it except old Mr. Horvath, who is either optimistic or senile. Probably both. I've started a garden in the plot behind the house. I'm growing vegetables for when you come home. Tomatoes, because I know they're your favorite. Herbs for cooking. Maybe some flowers too, because we'll need beauty after all this ugliness. 23 months since you left. I've counted every day. March, 1942. Elena, your letters keep me sane. When Klaus was killed last week, God, I can't believe I'm writing this, your letter from January arrived the same day. I sat in a foxhole reading about your garden, about tomatoes and herbs and flowers, and I cried. Klaus would have laughed at me. He would have said I was soft. But I don't care. I need you to know something. If I don't make it back, and please, let me finish, I need you to promise me you'll be happy. I need you to live a full life. Marry someone good. Have children. Plant gardens. Laugh. Don't let this war steal your future the way it's stealing mine. I love you too much to let you waste your life waiting for a ghost. April, 1942. Thomas Weber, don't you dare give up. Don't you dare tell me to move on. I didn't wait 2 years for you to come home just so you could give me permission to forget you. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not loving anyone else. I'm not giving up. You made me a promise. Now keep it. July, 1942. You're right. I'm sorry. I won't give up. I can't, not when I know you're waiting for me. We've been moved to a new position. I think things are changing. I can't say how or why, but there's a feeling in the air. Like a storm building on the horizon. I dream about you every night. In my dreams, the war is over and we are sitting in that cafe in the village square, the one that closed last year, drinking real coffee and eating pastries and planning our wedding. You're wearing that blue dress I love, and you're laughing at something I said. When I wake up, the dream disappears, but the feeling stays. Hope. You've given me hope, Elena. November, 1942. Thomas, winter is coming and I'm frightened. Your letters have been shorter lately, arriving less frequently. I tell myself it's just the winter affecting mail delivery, but I can't shake this feeling in my chest. Mama says I'm worrying too much, but how can I not worry? You're everything to me. The village is preparing for another hard winter. Food is scarce. Fuel is scarcer. But we survive because we must. Write to me soon. Please. December, 1942. I'm alive. That's all I can say. I'm alive, and I love you, and I'm coming home. I swear it. February, 1943. Thomas, it's been 2 months since your last letter. I'm trying not to panic. The postmaster says the winter has delayed everything. He says mail is taking longer to get through. But I can't sleep. I can't eat. I stand at the window watching for the postman every day. Where are you? Chapter 3, The Silence. March, 1943. The letter that finally arrived wasn't from Thomas. Elena knew before she opened it. The handwriting was different. Neat, official, impersonal. Her hands shook so badly that her mother had to tear open the envelope for her. Dear Miss Kovac. It is my duty to inform you that Oberleutnant Thomas Weber was reported missing in action on December 18, 1942, during operations near Stalingrad. He has not been seen or heard from since that date. Please understand that missing does not mean deceased. Many soldiers are separated from their units during combat and later reunited. We have not recovered a body, which means there is still hope. Oberleutnant Weber was a fine officer and a good man. He spoke of you often. On his person, we found several letters addressed to you that he had not yet had opportunity to post. I am enclosing these with this letter. My deepest sympathies for your loss. Major Friedrich Kessler. Missing. Not dead. Missing. Elena read the word over and over until it lost all meaning. Missing. Like a lost button. Like a misplaced book. Like something that might be found if only you looked hard enough. The enclosed letters were dated from late November through mid-December. She read them with shaking hands. November 28, 1942. Elena, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but we are being moved to Stalingrad. Everyone is nervous. The Russian winter is here, and it's worse than anything I imagined. But I'm trying to stay hopeful. I'm trying to remember your face, your voice, your promise. If I don't write for a while, don't worry. It just means I'm busy, not that I've forgotten you. I could never forget you. December 10, 1942. It's bad here, Elena. I'm not going to lie anymore. It's very bad. But I'm still alive. Still fighting. Still determined to come home to you. I've been thinking about what I'll say when I see you again. I've rehearsed it 1,000 times in my head, but I never get it right. How do you tell someone they're the reason you survived hell? I'll figure it out. I promise. December 17, 1942. Elena, if you're reading this, it means I didn't get to mail it myself. It means something happened. I need you to know that every moment I've spent with you, every walk, every conversation, every letter, has been the greatest joy of my life. You made me believe in beauty in the middle of darkness. You made me want to be better than I was. I don't know what's coming. But I know I love you. I know I'll love you until my last breath and beyond. If I don't come back, please don't let this war harden your heart. Promise me you'll keep believing in love, in goodness, in all the things we talked about on those long walks through the village. You are my light, Elena. You always will be. Yours eternally, Thomas. Elena didn't cry. Not at first. She folded the letters carefully, placed them in the box with all the others, and went about her day with mechanical precision. She helped her mother with the washing. She taught the children at school. She ate dinner without tasting it. It was only when she lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, that the truth crashed over her like a wave. Thomas was gone. Missing was just another word for gone. But then, in the darkness, she remembered something. Thomas once told her about a student who refused to accept that a mathematics problem was unsolvable. The boy spent weeks on it, approaching it from every possible angle, until finally he found a solution that everyone else had missed. The impossible, Thomas had said, is just the difficult that no one's bothered to solve yet. Elena sat up in bed, her heart pounding. Missing meant he could still be alive. Missing meant there was still hope. And if there was hope, if there was even the smallest possibility that Thomas was out there somewhere, waiting for her, then she couldn't just sit here waiting for news that might never come. She had to find him. Chapter 4, Journey Through Fire. The village priest thought she was insane. Her mother begged her not to go. The postmaster said it was impossible. A civilian woman couldn't just travel to a war zone. But Elena had made up her mind. I know where he was, she told her mother, spreading a map on the kitchen table. Stalingrad. If he's alive, he's somewhere near there. And if he's, she couldn't finish. I need to know. I need to find him. You'll die, her mother said bluntly. The Russians control that territory now. The roads are destroyed. There's no food, no shelter, nothing but death and ruins. Then I'll die looking for him, Elena said quietly. But I can't die here, not knowing. It took 3 weeks to prepare. She sold everything she owned, her grandmother's necklace, her father's watch, books, clothes, anything of value. She used the money to buy passage on trucks heading east, to barter for food and warm clothing, to bribe officials who could provide papers. The journey was supposed to take 2 weeks. It took 3 months. Elena traveled through a landscape of nightmares. She saw cities reduced to rubble, forests burned to ash, roads clogged with refugees moving in both directions, some fleeing west, some foolishly heading east like her. She learned to sleep in barns and abandoned buildings. She learned to eat whatever she could find, moldy bread, root vegetables dug from frozen ground, once a can of meat that might have been older than she was. She learned to hide when soldiers passed, to trade her labor for rides, to keep moving even when her body screamed for rest. In a ruined village near Kiev, she met a Russian woman named Katia who was searching for her son. They traveled together for a week, sharing what little they had, finding comfort in their shared mission. You're Thomas, Katia said one night as they huddled around a small fire. He must be a special man for you to do this. He is, Elena said simply. He's everything. My son Dmitri is everything to me too. But I think, Katia's voice broke. I think I'm not going to find him. I think I'm chasing a ghost. Then we are chasing ghosts together, Elena said, taking her hand. But the next morning, Katia was gone. She'd left a note, I'm going home. Some ghosts should stay buried. Go back, Elena. Go back while you still can. Elena didn't go back. She pushed forward, through Ukrainian villages where people looked at her with either pity or suspicion, through checkpoints where she handed over what little money she had left to bored soldiers who barely glanced at her papers, through a landscape so devastated it looked like the surface of the moon. And finally, in April 1943, she reached what was left of Stalingrad. Nothing could have prepared her for it. The city was a grave. Buildings stood like broken teeth against the sky. The Volga River ran grey with ash. Bodies, she tried not to look at the bodies, but they were everywhere, frozen in the positions they'd died, some partially buried in snow, others exposed by the spring thaw. Elena walked through streets that no longer had names, past buildings that no longer had purposes. She asked everyone she met about Thomas Weber, about German soldiers, about survivors. Most people just stared at her as if she were mad. But then, in a makeshift hospital in what used to be a school, a nurse stopped her. Weber? The woman repeated. German officer? Elena's heart nearly stopped. Yes. Yes. Do you know him? I might, the nurse said slowly. There's a man in the basement. Badly wounded, delirious. He was brought in months ago by Russian soldiers who found him half buried in a collapsed building. He keeps talking about someone named Elena. Elena couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. She followed the nurse downstairs that seemed to stretch forever, into a basement that smelled of death and disinfectant and despair. There were dozens of men down there, some Russian, some German, all broken in various ways. The nurse led her to a corner where a man lay on a thin mattress, covered by a single blanket. Elena knelt beside him and looked at his face. It wasn't Thomas. The disappointment was so crushing she couldn't stand. She sank to the floor, her whole body shaking with sobs she'd been holding back for months. The nurse knelt beside her, awkward but kind. "I'm sorry. I thought." "It's not your fault," Elena managed to say. "Thank you for trying." But as she stood to leave, the man on the mattress opened his eyes. "Elena?" he whispered. She froze. "Are you looking for Thomas Weber?" the man asked, his voice weak but clear. Elena fell to her knees again. "Yes." "Yes, do you know him?" "We were together," the man said. "In the same unit. When the building collapsed," he coughed, a wet, rattling sound. "He saved my life. Pulled me out. But then." "What?" Elena gripped his hand. "What happened?" "Russian soldiers came. They took the survivors to a camp. To the east, I think. For prisoners. Thomas was alive when they took him. I saw him. He was walking." "Where?" Elena demanded. "Where is this camp?" The man tried to remember. "East. Maybe 3 days' march. Near," he coughed again. "Near a river. I'm sorry. I can't remember more." "You've remembered enough," Elena said, squeezing his hand. "Thank you. Thank you." She stood, new determination flooding through her. Thomas was alive. He was alive, and he was a prisoner, and she was going to find him. Chapter 5, The Promise Kept. The prisoner camp was even worse than Stalingrad. Elena approached it in early May, when the first green shoots of spring were just beginning to push through the scarred earth, a mockery of hope in a place where hope went to die. The camp was surrounded by barbed wire and guarded by soldiers who looked as exhausted and defeated as the prisoners they watched. This wasn't a place of victory. It was a place where war had chewed up men and spit out the pieces. Elena had no plan. She simply walked up to the gate. "I'm looking for someone," she told the guard. "A German prisoner. His name is Thomas Weber." The guard stared at her as if she'd grown a second head. "Lady, there are thousands of prisoners here. I don't know any of their names." "Please," Elena said. "Please. I've come so far." Maybe it was the desperation in her voice. Maybe the guard had a sister or a sweetheart who would have done the same thing. Or maybe he was just tired of this whole goddamn war. "Wait here," he said. He disappeared into a small building. Elena stood at the gate, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. 20 minutes later, the guard returned with an older man, an officer, judging by his uniform. "You're looking for a German prisoner?" the officer asked. "Yes, sir. Thomas Weber. He would have been captured in December, near Stalingrad." The officer studied her for a long moment. "Why?" "Because I love him," Elena said simply. "And I promised to find him. He's a German soldier. He's a mathematics teacher who got drafted into a war he didn't want to fight. He's a man who writes poetry and hates coffee but drinks it anyway because it reminds him of home. Her voice broke. He's everything to me, sir. Please." The officer sighed. "We don't usually allow visitors. Especially not for enemy prisoners." "I'll do anything," Elena said. "I'll work. I'll trade. I'll—" "Stop." The officer held up his hand. "I have a daughter about your age. If I were in a German camp, I'd want her to have someone who loved her this much." He turned to the guard. "Find Thomas Weber. Bring him to the visitors area." "But sir." "Just do it." Elena waited in a small room with a table and 2 chairs. She waited for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. She smoothed her hair, then realized it didn't matter. She tried to think of what to say, then realized words would never be enough. The door opened. And there he was. Thomas looked nothing like the man who had left the village in 1941. He was painfully thin, his clothes hanging off his frame. His face was gaunt, marked with scars. His eyes were haunted by things she couldn't imagine. But when he saw her, those eyes, still blue, still impossibly blue, filled with tears. "Elena?" he whispered, as if afraid she might be a dream. "Thomas." She crossed the room in 2 steps and threw her arms around him. He was all bones and sharp angles, nothing like the strong man she remembered, but he was alive. He was here. He was real. They held each other and cried, great, wrenching sobs that shook them both. No words, not yet. Words could wait. Finally, Thomas pulled back just enough to look at her face. How? He managed to ask. How are you here? I came to find you, Elena said, as if it were the simplest thing in the world. Elena, you shouldn't have. This is a war zone, you could have. She kissed him. Cut off his protests with her lips, with the love she'd carried across thousands of miles. When they broke apart, Thomas was laughing and crying at the same time. You came for me, he said wonderingly. You actually came for me. I made a promise, Elena said. And I always keep my promises. So do I. Thomas reached into his pocket with shaking hands and pulled out a small object wrapped in dirty cloth. He unwrapped it carefully, revealing a simple ring made from twisted wire. It's not much, he said. I made it from, well, it doesn't matter what I made it from. Elena Kovac, I said I would marry you when the war ended. And sitting in this camp, I realized something. The war ended for me the moment you walked through that door. Because you are my peace. You are my home. You are everything worth living for. He held out the ring. Will you marry me? Elena looked at this man, this broken, beautiful, impossible man who had survived hell and still knew how to hope, and felt her heart overflow. Yes, she said. Yes, yes, yes. He slipped the wire ring onto her finger. It didn't fit properly and it would probably turn her skin green, and it was the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. The Russian officer appeared in the doorway. I can give you 1 hour, he said quietly. Then he has to go back. But Elena shook her head. No. I'm not leaving without him. Miss, he's a prisoner of war. I can't just. Then make him not a prisoner, Elena said firmly. The war is almost over anyway. Everyone knows Germany is going to surrender. What's the point of keeping thousands of men locked up just to die of disease and starvation? Let them go home. I don't have the authority. Then find someone who does. Elena stood, facing the officer. Sir, I walked across half of Europe to find him. I'm not leaving. If you send him back to that camp, I'll be outside the gates waiting. Every single day. For however long it takes. Is that really what you want? The officer looked at her for a long moment. Then, incredibly, he smiled. You remind me of my daughter. She's just as stubborn. He sighed. I'll see what I can do. No promises. It took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of Elena living in a nearby village, working odd jobs to pay for food, visiting Thomas as often as the guards would allow, which became more frequent as they got to know her. 6 weeks of bureaucratic nightmares and paperwork and bribes. But in June 1943, as summer finally arrived and the world started the long process of rebuilding, Thomas Weber was released from the camp. He and Elena stood outside the gates, blinking in the sunlight, hardly daring to believe they were both alive and together and free. Where do we go? Thomas asked. Elena took his hand. Home, she said. We go home. Epilogue, 70 years later. 2013. The young woman stood in the village square, looking at the monument. It listed the names of all the men from the village who had died in the war. 23 names, carved in stone. Thomas Weber's name wasn't on it. Great-grandma, the girl called. Is this the right place? Yes, dear, came a voice from behind her. This is where we met. Elena Kovac Weber moved slowly now, at 92, but her eyes were still bright. She joined her great-granddaughter at the monument. I don't understand, the girl said. You said Grandpa Thomas fought in the war. Why isn't his name here? Because he didn't die, Elena said simply. He came home. But you said he was missing. You said you had to go find him. I did. Elena smiled at the memory. I walked across half a continent to bring him home. That's crazy, great-grandma. Love usually is, dear. They walked together to a bench, the same bench where Elena and Thomas had sat 70 years ago, planning their future. Elena lowered herself onto it with a sigh. Tell me the story again, the girl said, settling beside her. You've heard it 100 times. I want to hear it 100 more. So Elena told her. Told her about a young teacher who made her laugh when the world was falling apart. About letters that crossed impossible distances. About a journey through fire and ice and death. About a promise kept, and a love that survived the worst the world could throw at it. And you got married? The girl asked, even though she knew the answer. 3 days after we got back to the village. At the church there. Elena pointed. Your great-grandpa wore his old suit. I wore my mother's wedding dress. We had bread and cheese for a reception because that's all we could afford. And it was the best day of my life. Better than the day he came home? Elena considered this. That was the day I got him back. The wedding was the day we started our life together. Both were perfect in different ways. And then what happened? Then we lived, Elena said simply. We had 3 children. We taught at the school together. We grew old. When he died 5 years ago, I held his hand and told him I'd see him soon. Do you miss him? Every single day. But I don't regret a thing. Not one moment. The girl was quiet for a while, thinking. Then she asked, Great-grandma, how did you know? How did you know he was worth all that? Elena looked at her great-granddaughter, so young, with her whole life ahead of her. I just knew, she said. The same way you know your own name. The same way you know the sun will rise tomorrow. Some things you don't need to question. You just believe. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a wire ring, carefully preserved despite its age. He gave me this in a Russian prison camp, Elena said. Worth less than nothing. But I've worn it on a chain around my neck every day since he died, because it reminds me that the most valuable things in life can't be bought or sold or measured. Love, hope, courage, these are the things that matter. These are the things that survive when everything else burns away. The girl looked at the ring, then at her great-grandmother's face, lined with age but still beautiful. I want a love like that, she said softly. Elena smiled. Then don't settle for anything less. Don't let anyone tell you that kind of love is foolish or impossible or only exists in stories. It exists. I lived it. And somewhere out there, it's waiting for you too. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the village that had seen so much, war and peace, death and life, endings and beginnings. And somewhere in the evening air, if you listen carefully, you might have heard an echo of laughter from long ago, the impossible, joyful sound of 2 people who had found each other in the darkness and held on tight. The end. Author's note. This story was inspired by countless true stories of love and courage during World War II. While Elena and Thomas are fictional characters, their story reflects the real experiences of millions of people who loved, lost, and sometimes, incredibly, found each other again in the aftermath of war. To all those who have loved someone through impossible circumstances, this story is for you.